covering the topic of homeostasis presented by Group 9A, including Jimmy Choi, Shelby Hasberger, Song Lee, and Saida Morgan. In this video lecture, I will be introducing the topic of what homeostasis is. Knowing what you know already, how would you explain homeostasis? Well, if you ask me, I'd like to think of a mechanical system that we use every day, the thermostat. If I am cold in my room because the temperature dropped, I will crank up the temperature to a set point that will warm the room that is just right. Regulating the temperature using a thermostat is the same concept of homeostasis. So how do we define homeostasis? By definition, homeostasis is a relatively stable or steady state of equilibrium, or a tendency toward such a state between different but interdependent elements or groups of elements of an organism, population, or group. What does this mean? Let's focus on the underlying portion of this definition. It is a relatively stable state of equilibrium. In simpler terms, homeostasis is defined as the maintenance of relatively constant internal environment, despite changes to the external environment. More generally, homeostasis can refer to the maintenance of relatively constant conditions within any system. And by any system, it can apply to cells, animals, plants, and even ecosystems. And by its definition, homeostasis is important for survival and function of any system. Stepping back, let's review on a familiar concept, the law of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, so energy is transferred or converted to another form. This law is involved in the process of homeostasis in many ways, such as food converting to an energy source for our bodies, glucose converting to energy that cells use to operate, or as we have seen in the thermostat example, our brain transfers energy from other parts of the body to the body's organs to cause shivering, signaling us to turn up the heat. Now, the black box model is a good way to explain homeostasis. The black box theory simply describes any system such as the cell, body, or even ecosystem in which input enters and output comes out without seeing the process taking place. For example, pretend that the black box is a system of a human body. When we snack during lectures, we know that it will produce an output of energy. What goes inside the black box or your body to convert the snacks into energy is unknown. So breaking into the black box, the term called the control center. The control center is kind of like the brain that determines what to do when there is a change to the internal environment in a system and takes action to optimize back to normal set point. But for the purpose of our unit, the control center is the black box, a system in which homeostasis operates at all levels of hierarchy of living systems such as the cells, tissues, organs, animal body, and even the ecosystem, contributing to a balance in life and nature. This is why a black box model is used to demonstrate homeostasis. After looking at the black box model, let's consider the external and internal environmental factors that affect homeostasis. These variables change constantly. However, the system is able to maintain balance. The external factors that affect the system's internal environment include temperature, humidity, and other factors such as the availability of food resources in the ecosystem. And the internal factors that must reach steady state to function properly and survive include the body temperature, blood pressure, ion concentration, and other factors such as biodiversity in ecosystem. Considering the changes in these factors that affect the system, how is homeostasis achieved? Well, homeostasis depends on feedback, which refers to responses made after change has been detected. There are two basic types, the negative and the positive. The negative feedback regulates homeostasis. The change in a factor triggers a response that tries to restore to its set point by opposing the change. Thermal regulation via a thermostat is an example of negative feedback. This feedback resists change by activating mechanisms that counteract the impending change. The positive feedback loops, the positive feedback brings about rapid change. The change in a factor triggers a response that amplifies an initial change. This is what happens during labor and childbirth. The contraction of the uterus causes the release of a hormone called oxytocin from the hypothalamus that causes contractions, in which causes the release of more oxytocin until the fetus is delivered from the uterus. So let's review these key concepts of homeostasis. In a black box, input is the cause of change in an internal environment or system, such as the drop in temperature causing the body to feel cold. The input is the effect of input to maintain homeostasis, such as the body shivering. The control center compares input variable to the set point and determines actions to take place. Set point is the normal value of a variable at its optimal state. Feedback loop is a mechanism with two parts in which the negative regulates homeostasis and positive feedback brings about rapid change. Lastly, our group chose an article titled Dinosaurs, Dragons, and Dwarfs: The Evolution of Maximal Body Size by Gary Burness, Jared Diamond, and Timothy Flannery. Basically, this article talks about the correlation of body mass of species to land area and how these authors wanted to explain the relationship between body mass of extinct mammals to food consumption requirement and its differential survival. The reason for choosing this article is because it corresponds to homeostasis on an ecosystem level, as it changed with time due to a number of factors that disrupted its homeostasis. It considers the key concepts mentioned in this video lecture, such as feedback system, which will be further discussed later in the subunit.